Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Jake Hofer with Exodus Trail Cameras. On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're going back to our most recent trip to Oklahoma and visiting with a gentleman named Jeff Booth. Now, Jeff has a shed that is kind of a mix of an apartment as well, and there is a lot of really great deer in there and some cool stories that he shares with us. But most importantly, he has two of the top 10 all-time archery bucks in the state of Oklahoma. You'll want to stick around and check those out. Before we get into this week's episode, though, we can go to Indiana, Kentucky, Oklahoma, or Iowa for next week's episode. So comment below on what state you want to see next. And until next time, see you guys.
Hey guys, I'm Jeff Booth. Welcome to my shop / barn apartment. Glad you're here. It's just something I'm really proud of, really passionate about, and I'm glad you guys wanted to come by and see it. Yeah, this is an 8-point, just in the area where I shot this deer. Not a well-known trophy area. This is kind of a nice buck. It's northeastern Oklahoma. Most of these deer are all sometime in the time frame of November. That's when I've always had my best luck. We always take we call it our rutcation. We go stay in the woods for 7, 10, 2 weeks, whatever it takes, but we hunt from daylight to dark. But that's a Mays County deer. This buck is a Lincoln County buck that I shot off the farm a few years back. I think 2016, the same year I shot another one of the big ones you'll see later. But this is just a really unique, high and tight racked 8-point. I had a little bit of video footage of him before I shot him, but I was going to let him walk, but after he went past, I couldn't stop. And I've actually got a cool picture on my trail cam of seconds before I shot that buck, and in the picture you can see me in my stand moments before this deer was taken. It's kind of a cool deal. So it's a neat story deer. This is a Lincoln County buck on one of my farms, and this is such a cool deer. This is absolutely one of my favorite bucks, and I don't know if you can see it real well, but it's a 7-point, but this is a 150 class 7. On his left side, there's a G2 that's almost 17 inches in length. And that's like, it was a heartbreaker when I found him because I saw this side when I shot him. And when I picked him up and realized he was a 7, I was a little bit disappointed. But ended up, this is one of my favorite deer. I mean, he just carries his mass all the way out. He's just a really, really cool deer. He was an older deer, so it was a great hunt. This is another Lincoln County buck. He has a little flyer off his right side right there that really is kind of cool and gives him a lot of character. But that's he was a really good, in my mind, mature buck to take off the farm. He was, most of these deer I call top pin bucks because when it comes to bow hunting, I want to be within 20, 25 yards to shoot a deer because I feel like in that, it's going to be a chip shot and no problem. So that deer was about, I think, 25, 26 yards, and he didn't go 70, 80 when he fell. And this was one of the first really cool big-bodied deer that I'd shot off my farm. And he's got, one tines broke off on his right side, but he's just a heavy chocolate-horned, 9-point basically. But that deer, he was a fighter. His ears were all ripped up. He was chasing a doe when I shot him, and it was a really cool hunt. But that's a big-bodied central Oklahoma deer. I mean, these deer, when they get to maturity on our farm, it's kind of crazy because they'll dress over 200 pounds, and that's a big body for our part of the state. If you walk over this way, you can kind of excuse the mess, building a house. Haven't got my shop all done. I got big plans for my trophy room in here when it's all said and done, but the house isn't quite finished yet, so this is kind of a work in progress. But you can see as you go by, I mean, outdoors is my thing. This is my bass boat. I tournament bass fish. It's one of my other passions. Anything in the outdoors has been a passion of mine, but that's my bass fishing rig. Right here, this is a Mays County deer at one of the farms that we used to hunt, and we had a really cool deer camp there. And that's just that was a big mature 9-point for there, and that was a mid-November deer as well. And then if you move on over, this 8-point, this is kind of a cool deer because we had a stand that we called the emu stand. We name all our stands, but we called it the emu stand because an emu just came out of nowhere and was on the farm. We didn't know where it came from. We didn't know if we wanted to shoot it. We didn't know what we were supposed to do with this emu, but everybody saw it on this ranch, but it was around. And actually the stand I shot that out of was one of my buddy's sets that he always had hunted for years. And I conned him into letting me go sit in that stand this morning, and I shot that buck running a doe. And for there, that was a really good deer at that farm at the time. If you come back this way a little bit, there's another, there was an 8-point gene down there. Just a lot of 8 points, but he was wide. What was cool about this buck, and I'll never forget, is there were 3 bucks, and they were triplets because they looked exactly the same chasing one doe. And the reason he was taken was he was the only one I could get stopped. I was basically yelling in my tree stand to try to get him to stop, and I think he stopped at 10 yards after they ran around my tree for the 5th time. But there was 3 deer, and when he ran off, I watched him pile up. When he piled up, one of the other bucks followed him out where he had piled up dead. And I don't know if you guys ever seen this turkey hunting where the other bird will come in on a dead bird and start, spurring it. Well, the other buck went out to this buck laying dead and was hooking him and kicking and picking him up. So I got down out of the tree because I'm like, this deer's going to demolish my other deer, So I got down, and as I got within less than 10 yards, that buck wasn't scared of me. So I was like, man, this maybe wasn't the smartest thing to do. But finally he ran off, but that was a cool story on that deer. This buck is a Carter County deer in southern Oklahoma, and at the time, that was my best bow kill. And this was in the mid to late 90s. And at the time when I shot that deer, at that point in time, that was one of my best bow kills I'd ever had. And it's a memorable hunt. That's what's kind of cool is why I mount a lot of my deer is I can just sit in here in my shop, and I can look at each and every one of these deer and realize I remember every instant of every hunt. I mean, there's nothing I have forgotten about any of these deer, and they're all very important to me and hold a special place. Come over this way if you can do it without tripping. This is came off. This is a Lincoln County deer, and he's crazy cool. And I think he had an injury or something happened to him at some point because the antler on his left side is growing out the side of his head. And he's got 8 points on this side that are all just crazy, junky points, and then he's perfect on his right side. That's a clean 8. That deer was running a doe when I shot him. Almost all these bucks that are in here that we're looking at are bucks that I have taken in the rut. I've only got 1 deer in this barn, happens to be my biggest, that was shot early season. The rest of these deer are all rut, chasing does, rutting activity type bucks, searching for does or something, because my farm is not real big and they don't live on me. They just come in. You catch bucks passing. They're coming and going. But that's a Carter County buck down in southern Oklahoma, and this buck was taken out of the same stand that the other Carter County buck several years apart. But it was a really cool. We call it the Ridge Road stand, and it's a cool spot. A lot of big deer that were taken down there on that farm back in the day. If you come over here, we will get to what I consider the end all be all. If I never shoot another deer in my hunting career, this deer right here, these two are just, for the rest of my life, I'll be able to look at these 2 bucks in awe and just still be like, I can't believe I shot these 2 bucks with my bow on the farm. They both gross. You're basically looking at 400 inches of deer right here. I mean, this deer is in the books. I think he grossed 205 inches gross. Netted right at 190 is the net in the books. As far as I know, the last time I had checked, this is the number 3 all time in the Cy Curtis books archery kill for Lincoln County. Number 3. This one is number 7 all time. So I've got 2 top 10 all time archery. This isn't gun or anything else, but archery. I've got 2 in the top 10 out of Lincoln County. And to me, that's just unbelievable. I didn't even know that was a thing until when they sent me my score sheet and let me know. I had no idea. So kind of gives me another little bragging right, because I'm going to tell people about it. If I got 2 top 10s, they're going to know. But it's so crazy. This deer was taken November 6, 2016. This is my only early season buck ever. And this was October 2nd, 2019. They're 2 totally different hunts, just as exciting. This buck was on a doe. They were breeding, actually. I mean, he had her on lockdown. The cool story to this deer, no pictures, no prior knowledge of this buck being on my farm. And it was my first morning of rutcation, what I call rutcation. And I got in the stand dark. It was way dark. Daylight wasn't 30, 45 minutes before it ever even cracked dawn. But I could hear this buck running and grunting a doe all around me. It was dark. I almost got my flashlight out at one point. I just want to see what it was. I want to see what was running this doe. But I didn't. And right at daylight, I was going to grunt and rattle, and he grunted. Couldn't see it. Still didn't know what was going on. But I finally, what had happened was he came behind a cedar tree, and when he walked out, he was maybe 15, 20 yards away, broadside, but I was set in the wrong direction. I had to get stood up and turned around. It didn't really work out that great. I was, nervous. I was buck fevered for sure, and I didn't realize the doe was laying basically right under me, bedded down. She gets up. When she starts to walk off, he starts stomp grunting her and going after her, and he stops. And at this point in time, my daughter had started bow hunting with me, or actually she'd been bow hunting a couple years, but I had a ladder stand back in the woods that was 30 yards away, and he stopped right underneath her ladder. She wasn't hunting that day. Wish she would have been, but he's right there, so I know he's 30. It was thick. I thought he was about to walk off. I found a small window to shoot through a tree and let the arrow go, and basically the rest is history. It was kind of one of those deals. I didn't even know where the arrow hit him, because when it went through the trees, I couldn't see. I lost track of my arrow, but he ended up not going. He maybe went total 80, 85 yards. Now, in saying that, how great it was to shoot this deer, this buck I knew was living on me. I had left a camera up, didn't even realize I'd left one up, went to the farm in July to do some work, was walking down about 300 or 400 yards from where I shot this deer, and we at a stand that we called the dog leg, and realized I left the camera up. Well, I pulled the card, came home, and when I plugged the card in the computer and started looking over the pictures, this buck was all over it. I had hundreds of pictures. I had pictures of this deer in velvet. I had pictures of this deer losing his velvet. I mean, he was living on me. One of the first times I've ever had a mature buck, by any means, just living on me. So I had a feeder down by the well stand, and it had been going, because it was a motor feeder, so it had been going off all summer long. And I knew that if this buck was on that trail at that dog leg, that the way he was traveling, he was going to that feeder. So while we were down there, I went and made sure and filled it back up when it was full of corn. Came back in September, right before season opened, and still didn't have a camera on that feeder where this deer was going. But when we came back in September just to fill things up, this actual feeder was one of those shorter ones that, the deer could get to it. And I'd seen them in the past when I'd be hunting. Deer would walk up underneath it and lick it and get corn out, even though, the motor hadn't come off yet. This feeder they had totally emptied this feeder between July to September, when it shouldn't have been empty. This thing holds a lot of corn, but they were in there just turning that. So I filled it up. That was the weekend before bow season opened. So October 1st is when our season opens in Oklahoma. I didn't hunt. October 2nd, I didn't plan on hunting yet, because like I said, I've never taken a big deer early. I'm that guy that's always said, all you're doing is educating your deer if you go hunt early. You're gonna mess it up. Wait till the rut. All those kind of things. So I was gonna drive to the farm and put a camera on the feeder finally. But I thought, well, if you're gonna drive the farm, take your bow. This is a foolproof. If the wind's out of any southerly direction, I can get in this stand and I'm never gonna mess anything up. It's just not gonna happen the way this setup is. So I thought, well, go hunting. It's 95 degrees when I'm driving to the farm. I get to the farm, hang a camera on the feeder, and I get in my stand. And it's about 5:30 when I got in my stand, maybe 5. It didn't get dark till almost 8 at that time of year. So I'm sitting there, it's hot, I'm sweating, fighting mosquitoes, all those things. And I remember sending one of my good buddies a text, and it said, man, it's 95 degrees, it's hot, I'm sweating, this is crazy, but I got a weird feeling about tonight. And about, before the sun ever fully set, I had one 8-point come from the west, like they always do at this place, and he came into the feeder. Young 8, wasn't going to shoot him. Just, man, I was happy just seeing a deer. Well, a couple minutes later, from the south, a bigger 8-point comes in to the feeder, and now I got 2. And I'm sitting there watching these 2 deer, and I'm thinking, man, this is awesome, man. 2 bucks, early season. You know, I'm not even thinking about the mosquitoes anymore. I'm just watching deer. Those 2 younger bucks start sparring. This goes on for 5-10 minutes. I got video of it. I'm sitting there watching them do these things, thinking this is cool. Well, all of a sudden, they both just stop, jerk their heads, and look back to the southwest. Well, I can't see that far from where I'm sitting in the stand, but I knew it was another deer coming. So I'm kind of like, to myself, I said, man, you might want to put your phone up and quit videoing and get your bow, because you know what's living here. So I put my phone up, get my bow, and these other 2 deer, they won't move a muscle. And I could see, finally could see feet coming. And when I saw rack, this is what I saw. And I mean, I'm just sitting there dumbfounded. 95 degrees. And I'm sitting there basically opening day. It's the second day of season. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. He's at 25 yards, broadside. I'm sitting there worried about drawing my bow because I got 3 bucks within 25 yards or less right there in front of me. One of the younger bucks walks behind this buck and kind of sticks his nose in his rear end. And this buck hooks one of the smaller bucks and picks him up, and they kind of bust like a covey of quail. And at that point, I'm like, these deer don't even know you're here. Draw your bow and shoot this buck. So I'm sitting there, and he's 25 yards, and I'm shooting a single pin sight for the first year, but I had it on 25 yards because that's where my feeder was. I knew it was 25 yards, so no excuses, but I'm going to tell myself, this deer's at broadside. He's 25 yards away. I'm at full draw. These deer have no idea I'm there. I've shot tons of deer with a bow and arrow, but on this buck, I punch my trigger or do something because the first arrow goes right in front of his back hips. I mean, as far back as you could hit him without hitting him in bone. It hit him right back there. He runs about 25 yards and stops directly away from me. And as I'm watching him, I'm pretty sure I was crying. I'm mad. I'm upset. I'm like, I can't believe you just made that shot on that buck. And I'm just begging him in my mind, like, please lay down right there. I'll go sleep in the truck tonight. I'll come get you in the morning. But he's got a lot of guts hanging out the exit wound where I'd shot this deer. I mean, I knew he was going to hurt bad. You don't know. He finally turns, after 10 minutes or so, he turns broadside and takes a step. I know he's exactly 50 yards. I have my single pin bow, first year using the single pin. I'd been practicing the night before at 60, and just because I'm like, I'm never going to shoot a deer at 60 yards, but I was shooting, and I was grouping it pretty good. I was like, man, at this point, what do you have to lose? Dial it to 50. You know he's 50, and put another arrow in this deer. So the other 2 bucks, they're back to sparring and goofing off. They have no idea what's just happened. So I draw my bow, shoot this deer at 50 yards, and when that second arrow hits that deer, I knew the deer was dead. I mean, I could not have walked down there and stabbed him any better with that arrow. It was meant for me to kill this deer, and it was something I'll never forget. I mean, I made a phone call, probably sounded like a 5-year-old schoolgirl, just excited with my buddies. And, you know, they even put me on the news at one point, the local news channel. There's a girl named Tess Monty, and she's an outdoors woman, but she's a newscaster. And in the video and the pictures they're posting up, I'm in cut-off shorts and a camouflage long-sleeve T-shirt and flip-flops. I mean, it's the craziest setup ever, but that's the story of this buck, and it's just something I'll never forget. And I appreciate you guys coming by and checking them out. I hope everybody enjoys this episode because these are special to me. All these deer are special to me, but anybody that knows me for a few things, and that's I'm always in the outdoors doing something. I love to fish, love to hunt. Anything to do with that, I absolutely love. This place right here that y'all just drove up on, I mean, this is a dream come true. I've got a little bit of land right here basically in town, and I'm going to try to turn this into a place where you can shoot some quality deer as well. But it's just something I'm doing every day.